Hello, I'm Annette Munich. I'm Father John's co-host. He's unable to be here with us today. As many of you know, his wife is very seriously ill. We have a GoFundMe raising some money for them. GoFundMe Sharon Whittington. And I'll be putting the link in the chat room and also in the comments under the show for people that watch it later. We really appreciate all of your generosity and all of your kindness and prayers. So thank you for that. And he is so very sorry that he can't be here. Father Shawn Whittington, you may know him from Eli Roth Presents, A Legion of Exorcists, which aired on Travel Channel and can also be seen on Max and Discovery Plus. Um, He is a priest with the United States Old Catholic Church. Um, Father Shawn is an author. He has two books, Guide Ghosts in the Paranormal Ministry, Volumes 1 and 2. And that is another way to help support him is if you're interested in his books, buy his books. They're available on Amazon, paperback, Kindle. You can also get them through his website and get a signed copy. And Father Shawn's books are really um, the, I would say, scariest books I ever did. I'm his publisher. Uh, his books are true accounts of cases that he had. He talks about how he resolved these cases. There's prayers inside. It's a great book for spiritual warfare, but these stories are just crazy, unpredictable, very different. Um, Not what you would expect at all. I'll talk about it for another minute because my guest popped out and she popped back in. So we've got a great guest today, but I did lose her there for a minute. Um, there's stories in his books about like this wicked gypsy carnival, possessed people in old folks' homes, a shapeshifter Native American story, all kinds of things. And so each book is just a collection. Each chapter is its own case and its own story. Talking about books, I have two new books out this week. One of them is The Art of Writing by James Baxter. This is a marvelous book for anybody interested in writing. It's a collection of his articles on writing and just really, really interesting and very practical information. If you are interested in writing, I can't imagine that this book would not be of help to you in planning out your book, character development, pacing your story. Everything is in there, how to approach it. Just absolutely beautiful in the way it's done. And the other book I have is called The Other World is Real. And that is a collection of strange tales. This is another book that is a collection of stories, true stories and people's experiences. Very, very interesting stuff. And that is Thomas Lee Free's The Other World is Real, True Tales of High Strangeness, Ghosts, Companion Spirits, Angels, and Other Creatures. So I was blessed to be working on two very interesting books this week. And all of this is available on Amazon in Kindle and paperback formats. So we hope that you'll check it out. And I have a children's book coming out, Miss Fox and the ABCs. So that's Denny Gager. And I'll be talking about that more next week because I'm not done with it yet. But very cute books and back revisiting basic skills for children, things that you can read and share with your children and feel good about. Now I'm going to bring on Trish Mo, investigator extraordinaire. I'm going to give her a big build-up. Investigator extraordinaire, psychic, and lifelong experiencer. And she's been on before. A lot of you remember her and you love her and you love her stories. So I asked her if she would come back and sit with me, knowing that we would be able to have a very interesting conversation. And having said all of that, I'm going to bring her on now. Welcome back. Trish, do you hear me?
Hi, thank you.
Don't scare me like that. She doesn't
I
say anything
can. Can you
else.
hear me?
I hear you. Oh, good. Yeah, so, we've had you on before. It always turns into a super deep, intense, and interesting hour because you've experienced so much. You're a psychic and you have experienced paranormal since you were a child. Yes, Trish, do you hear me?
I
And
have.
oh, she has. Okay, good. Um, how old were you when that first started?
Uh, Gosh, as long as I can remember.
As long as you can remember.
Um, I have memories from from the time I was a baby. I mean, y- of weird things happening to me, but of course, I was born and raised, outside of Roswell, New Mexico, and so there's that whole theory. But um, yeah, it's something that has always been a part of my life. I finally, after so many years, um, I was a chimera at birth, a human chimera, meaning I absorbed my twin and and triplet, they think. And so it
Mm.
took me a really long time to kind of realize that either A, they my siblings that passed um, are still part of me because I still have some of their organs. So either that is my connection to the other world, or it's just something that I was born with. So
That's such an interesting story. How prevalent is that to happen where a twin absorbs another twin? Is that more common than we think or very, very rare?
I think it's more common than we think. The only reason I found out about it was because um, I have certain, like I have some organs where I have multiple organs, and so and I only found that out when I was in like college because because I got sick. And so, science has proven that even in organ transplant, the recipients, there's all these stories of people um, who have, like the little girl who received eyes from a convicted felon, and she had no idea who the eyes came from, but she started having all of these dreams, and she could recite almost with 100% accuracy some of the things that haunted her, as far as murders and things that he had committed, so things through his eyes. And so that's really when I started researching this stuff. And so if that's the case, speaking of residual energy, if that's the case, then it would be the same with organs, and with, you know I hold my siblings' energy that have passed on, things like that. Oh,
That's super
somebody in the chat
interesting.
said, I am a chimera too. Research found
Yeah.
1 in 8
1 in 8
pregnancies it can
pregnancies.
happen. So yeah.
And the way that they find out is because you have multiple organs, right? So they just make an assumption. Otherwise, how would they know?
Right, but if I hadn't Exactly. There's probably more people that are born like that than they realize, you know.
Right. I've heard other stories, and I've also heard accounts where there's people who they get a donated organ, um, and they develop different personality traits, different cravings. It changes their life. So it's like you got a
Yeah.
part of the essence of another person. And what do you think you have a little lag? I think I'll just ask her a question and get her talking and not stop so much because I think she has a little lag. But what we were talking about before the show this time, and excuse me, last time that she was on, she had a really cool
I
investigation
think we
about,
lost.
hello, welcome back. I was telling everybody that last time we were on the show, we had a great talk about investigation that you had at a Civil War battlefield. And another time we were talking about your visit to Prague, and that was very cool. But we were saying today that we might talk a little bit about
Yes.
residual energies to start up. And here's Heidi. Hi, Heidi. We love Heidi. Okay, Carrie said, I was able to remove her essence and a profound change in my interests and thought processes changed. That's interesting. That's very interesting. And, you know, if you had that your whole life, you wouldn't know that part of that was, should I say the word attachment? It is a word attachment, but it doesn't mean something demonic. But you had an attachment on your spirit for your whole life and didn't even realize it until it was removed. That's really interesting. Trish, I gotta get you talking, girl. I'm about
Interesting.
to
So for the
tap
lost my
the
twin and triplet.
Okay.
For the longest time, with my twin and triplet, I I thought I was almost haunted by them,
Interesting.
and I had this almost this guilt, you know, that I was able to live and they weren't, and finally they said no, you know, that's not what happened. You know, they said you lived because you were the strongest, you know, we died so you could live, you know, type thing.
Wow.
So I really had to come to terms with that. And it really helped. But if I didn't know, you know, all that time, then it was kind of, it was confused. There were so many where I did feel different energies, not as in a possession or anything, but coming from within, where I felt like I was being pulled, you know, I was pulled in different directions as far as spiritually. So um, it is quite a profound experience, though, as far as that goes, you know.
How are you able to connect with and understand their thoughts and feelings? And also, the second part to that question is, do you still experience this today?
Well, I think I connect with them in the same way that I connect with any person who is not no longer living. You know, um, it's very similar. It's just I have a closer connection with them because they're part of me. So
But again, it's kind of like what we were talking about with Carrie. That's the way it always has been, so that's the way that it is, and that's not anything unusual. And that's all made up into the fabric that has become you and your life.
hmm and I often wonder if that's why, I've had so many near death experiences, and and a theory on it was that um, there's not as many humans. The population is decreasing in comparison to the number of souls out there throughout all time. So it's like if real estate on Earth, know has decreased as far as bodies to live in, and experience this lifetime. Um, it's kind of like if my body was an apartment building, and you imagine it like that. If your body's a house, mine's like a 3-story apartment building, and so each one has their own karma and their own experience and their own um, things to learn in this lifetime. And so I've often thought, with all my near death experiences, I'm like, maybe that gave me extra lives, or kind of like.
And how many near death experiences have you had? I want to thank everybody for being patient. We're having a little
She said
lag
it would be
here.
maddening to make a simple choice to pick up her. Yeah.
We're having a little lag here, and she's behind in hearing what I'm saying. And
You keep dis you keep disappearing, Annette.
oh, really? I'm disappearing. You know what? I would like to try and bring Carl in here and have a three-way conversation. And then if you drop off or lag, he and I can keep on the topic that we want to discuss with you, if that would be all right. So, Carl, can you come in here? I'm going to send an invite to your Facebook. And if you can pop in, I'd appreciate it. And that would kind of round out some of the gaps in the conversation because um, she's having a lag, although we'll still talk on the same topics. Okay, I put that in your Facebook. All right, Trish. So you say that I'm kind of going in and out, and I see her, but she just popped off. Thank you, Carl. If you can come in and round out the conversation, that'd be lovely. And Carl's in his car too. Hi, Carl.
Yeah, I've got good internet here, so
You're my
we're good.
hero today because she dropped off a few times before I started the show. So I was a little bit teeny tiny worried. I'm going to bring her back in, and I'd like to talk on the same topics, but just sort of this rounds it out a little bit for the audience, in case there's a lag or whatever.
Sure.
And, you know, I appreciate you. You're the go-to guest for any occasion. A man of many words and many subjects. So thank you. Trish, I'm glad you're back.
I
Okay.
went back to my laptop was lagging too much, so
Okay. Well, this should be good. And then I want to stay on the same topics that we were going to talk about, but we have Carl to kind of round it out. And if you have a lag or you pop off again, you know, we could just kind of keep the conversation going. And he's also in his car, so we're doing pretty good. But we're going to have a good conversation and finish it up. So we were going to talk about residual energies too, but go ahead and pick up wherever you want to.
which one?
Either way.
So what I was saying with the organs, that kind of goes into, as far as residual energy, you know, residual energy can affect objects, organs, people, places. I've had this conversation before with Annette that there was a house I lived in New York, a very old house, but there had been 9 stabbings throughout history in that house that were completely unrelated over the years. You know, it happened every 20, 30 years. And I interviewed years ago Jill Weaver when we got on this subject, because she was a biologist at the time, as far as how, you know, emotions and human energy and things affect. And she was the one that had told me there is, in some states, not all states, have a law as far as the real estate industry goes, where they have to disclose if like a murder or a suicide or something has happened at that location for the next owners. And I think that's a really good thing, because I would say I've been looking at houses recently, and I'm probably drawn to these. I mean, maybe that's part of my purpose, but the last 3 houses I've looked at, just randomly, someone who lived there has unalived themselves. So, and then something else, once you start getting into the history of the place, you know, I find out something else tragic happened also at that location 20 years prior, 50 years prior, 100 years prior, but almost in the same exact scenario.
Yeah, so that's very, now you could say this is something residual and you could say it's haunted. You could also make the argument this place might be cursed.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Did you experience a lot of paranormal around there, or?
I experience paranormal everywhere. So to me, that's normal, you know. But once you start getting into, it also has a lot to do, if you start getting into the quantum theory of multiple realities and things like that, the energy on the timeline, regardless, timing for the most part is fluid, so it doesn't matter. But if you put everything in the same scenario, then it recreates that same energy and frequency. And so, and we've learned that with with wars and even, like, you know, I always think about those things, like the assassination of presidents and stuff, like Lincoln, you know, they say was assassinated at the Ford Theater, and then Ford was, what is it? So everything's like the flip side of those. And the same with wars and stuff. We keep repeating things, but I think we repeat things as humans. That's part of our learning process. We're going to repeat it until we learn differently. So,
Well, the idea of residual hauntings is very interesting, and a lot of people have a bunch of different theories, but there are a lot of different things that you could call a residual haunting, kind of like what you're talking about. But I experienced a residual haunting in a place that I lived that was a little bit more of what people would call a residual haunting of, I would see this guy, he looked the same, he looked like a real person, he did the same thing over and over and over again. We don't know why. He was walking towards the back of the house. You go back there, nobody's there. There's no way to get out back there. But I would see, it was very creepy, actually. I would see him in the bathroom mirror. I would see him walking behind me. And it happened pretty frequently. And my kids saw him. He was a young guy. And it looked like somebody's in your house. And he would just be walking down the hallway wearing the same outfit, walking by. And before I understood that he was a residual, I'd get really nervous that I was going to be standing in the bathroom looking in the mirror, and he would stop and turn and be standing behind me and blocking my way out of the bathroom. Yeah. So I got a genius idea, and I covered the bathroom mirror with a hand towel forever. And I was done with looking in the mirror and seeing the guy walk by. I never saw him with my just regular eyes. I only saw him in the mirror.
Huh. That's interesting.
So that's your story of a ghost that may or may not look like a regular person that does a repeat thing.
Well, another thing, the house I live in now, the person had unalived themselves prior, and they've renovated the house and remodeled. I didn't know this, and they renovated and everything. And so our kitchen is where the bedroom used to be, which apparently is where it happened. Well, before I ever knew that, for the longest time, there was these red spots on my ceiling in the kitchen. And I thought it was like spaghetti sauce or something. I have kids. Like, I thought they flung spaghetti sauce or something up there, and because they're kind of lower ceilings in the kitchen. I have painted over that so many times, and it keeps coming back. Well, then it was after that I learned, and there's always been this guy that walks through the house, this older man. And it was after that I learned that that's where he killed himself. And so another thing, when I used to take care of my dad, my dad had dementia. And at some points, I think, obviously, we already know that, spirits a lot of times will inhabit or try to possess more vulnerable populations. Somebody who's, if somebody's under the influence, or like with dementia, things like that, elderly people. So it was like he would take on that personality sometimes. My dad would. And just say the weirdest things I knew weren't coming from him, that I knew were coming from this spirit. And it's something that I don't sense, a negative energy in the house now, but we've lived there for a while. So maybe that has transmuted it, but other places, if you don't do that, then it continues to happen.
Let's see if Carl wants to weigh in. Carl, I don't want to pull you in.
Oh, no, you're fine.
You're part of the Traveling Wilbury show.
Sorry, I should be home in about 5 minutes, but yeah, but yeah, no, and everything you said was right. I mean, yeah, I grew up in a house that was haunted, and there was a gentleman that had killed himself in the upstairs bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And growing up, I'd see him or hear him or feel him, driving through, walking down the staircase, etc. The dog would definitely see him. But and then I'd have vivid dreams that he was in, and later on, of course, with the great, ancestry.com, I actually ended up, looking him up, and sure enough, I found all kinds of information on him that really jived with my experiences. So, yeah, whether or not they're, residual or not, I know he wasn't, mainly just because of my vivid dream interactions, but it was, it was always interesting, and I completely agree with everything you said.
And a lot of times when people talk about residuals, they're talking about a spirit or an energy that may not be a spirit, that just might be repeater energy that may or may not be interactive at all with the current world. And it's almost like you might say that there was a little tear in time, maybe, and they're doing what they always do, and you're doing what you do, and for a second you can see each other.
Yep. Oh, it was interesting. There were some, when I worked for Yuma County back in 1990. So I was down in a lot of old buildings that were down there, and I know that everyone says that the Yuma Territorial Prison there is very haunted. I never really actually went there. The areas that I was in were plenty haunted, but some of them there were residual. In fact, there had been the building that the county offices were in was a hotel at once that had burned down in 1916, and then it was rebuilt as this bank building in 1920, and then of course it had been converted into the offices for the county. But there was residual where you would hear on a third floor that didn't exist. You could hear like stampeding people yelling and screaming and yelling fire, and it was quite disturbing for a lot of the county workers. But in the basement, though, there were not residual spirits, and they would torment the construction guys and others in the building, and it was always it was always a fun day at work. That was for sure.
Never knew what to expect. And
right,
that kind of
exactly.
reminds me of a story that Father Shawn wrote about that was really interesting, about these people experiencing a residual haunting. And the building was changed from what it used to be. And they'd see spirits walking upstairs that are no longer there and walking right into the wall.
Yeah.
Oh, in fact, I always wonder because the house I grew up in actually was torn down about 4 years ago, and this mega mansion was built on the lot. And I'm always curious to know whether or not Mr. Dobbick is still still following some of his paths.
But that brings up another question. Like you mentioned, the upstairs, it sounded like people were stampeding and there wasn't an upstairs. Okay, so this is where you get into the quantum theories of, is that a tear in the space-time, where that's actually happening, but in a different reality in the past or in the future or whatever? Or is it actually, something, and like your timeline is just now catching up to it, or what have you, or is it something that's actually like more of a haunting, when it comes to things that are no longer there? Because where I live now out in the country, everybody has always said there's no trains that go through there. There's never been a train through there, blah, blah, blah. And we hear trains all the time. And then upon further research, there was a really, 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 it's no longer there anymore, but there was at one time a really old track before they started mapping them and recording all the routes and everything. And it was just like, a back almost like a back road, but for trains, that they a really short route that it rerouted on. So it may not have been recorded. So a train actually did go through there, but we hear it all the time, and there's nothing, it's not there. So kind of like that. Like, are we glimpsing into portions of other timelines, or is it a haunting?
And how would we determine that, except for the only way that I think one way or the other is if the spirit seems interactive and aware of us or not, or just like two timelines crossing over for a minute. Although I will say I've heard a few stories of people who had stuff going on in their house, and they thought that what they were dealing with was just residual. And some people say it's energy and not even a human spirit. But then when they interrupted the thing that they keep doing on purpose or by accident, then they notice that the residual spirit does notice them, stops what they're doing, looks at them and whatnot. But
Right.
other than that, they're almost just like a record that keeps going around in a circle.
Well, it's no different than humans. I mean, most people have no idea that there's elemental spirits and human spirits and everything around us at all times, everywhere we go.
Right.
But you're not always aware of that until you see it, and then it's like once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Right.
So that makes sense, as far as whether. And then another thing is with residual energy and spirits is, even if it is not an interactive, intelligent energy or spirit, or even like from a human soul, I do believe that it can still influence humans. You know what I mean? So just because that energy in a specific location might not be directly tied to any person or that has ever lived, I think that can still influence a human's actions if they're not aware of their spiritual energy.
Well, it definitely made me feel influenced to cover the mirror with a hand towel and maybe want to move because
Right.
I'm tired of the creepy guy in the mirror. Something about that was just so creepy, seeing somebody walk by, in the bathroom, looking in the mirror and just seeing that over my shoulder. It was just
When they say mirrors are portals, so
right.
that makes a lot of mirrors and cameras and anything like that. Makes a lot of sense. And then now that we have more technology, people say, oh, now all of a sudden there's ghosts and aliens everywhere. Well, no, it's not that they just now started being present. It's that we just weren't aware, because now you can go out, you don't have to have ghost hunting equipment or whatever. You can use your cell phone. It's very sensitive. Shoot, you could use your car. People are picking up spirits on their car, like their dash cams and stuff, because technology is much more sensitive to like your phone and to different frequencies than humans are. So it's not that it's a new thing. They've always been there. It's just that we're just now becoming more aware.
Right. Did you want to jump in, Carl? He looks like he took his glasses off and he's getting serious. And now he's gone.
He must have gotten home and now he's
Carrie said our doorbell used to ring and our doorbell is broken. The nerve when this happened in the night. That's funny.
Maybe it was, but when it would ring, I wonder if there was something that was like, was there someone outside? Was it trying to warn you of something? Just as I think that people and animals and everything obviously have energy and spirits, I think that houses and cars and things can become aware too.
Yeah, very much so. And sometimes, like when people tell me of something that's going on, I ask them, "What
Can
were
you
you
hear me?
doing?" I do hear you. Welcome back.
Mhm.
Do you hear me?
Hang on a second.
What was happening at the time that you experienced this, and how did it make you feel? And something really interesting about paranormal experiences is that if somebody were to ask, what was the scariest thing that ever happened to you? There's a lot of things that you could say sometimes that sound like it would be a lot scarier, but in the moment, the way the energy felt around you and the way it impacted you, if being a psychic, you feel an intention. Something could be very shocking, but you don't feel that it's malevolent or ill intended, and something else can seem like it's a somewhat small thing, but the way it felt and came at you felt aggressive or something of a darker nature. And so, I think it's really important when you do experience something to think about, what was I just doing? What was I just saying? Sometimes, were you talking about somebody that had passed away just a little bit ago, and now this happened, almost like a validation? Oh, Carol's outside now. Field trip. Where are we going? And he may or may not be here for. You know what? We're just going to make the best of this that we can. That's all right. So as long as we keep talking and it's interesting conversation, that's all that really matters.
Sometimes I remember, speaking of spirits, when a lot of times, depending on who I was talking to, who I was interviewing, there would be so much. I could have perfect signal, and then all of a sudden, depending on the energy of the other people, or if, who knows, like maybe certain spirits didn't want us to say what we were saying, or did want us to say what we were speaking about, things like that would always interrupt the broadcast sometimes. So
Yes, I've experienced a lot of that, and back in the past with other radio shows, and I talk about this a lot. I experience it with books. I think there's books that they don't like going out there, so they mess with me and try to slow it down. And
absolutely.
then once the book goes out, it stops. Especially books that have solutions, prayers, and strategies and whatnot. They don't like those kind of books to go out in the world. So they will interfere, and they're so very good at using electrical,
Yeah.
anything, technology. They're so good at that, just great at that. So Carl's back.
I'm back.
Are we going to go look for a Sasquatch now? Let's go look for a Sasquatch.
Yeah, unfortunately not. No, this is my front yard. So
All we need is a pocket full of blueberries, and we can go.
that's
A
right.
pocket full of blueberries.
Golden Cougar Wolf says, at my grandma's house, we used to see a little girl on the porch. The son of the guy who built the house came by one day to see the house and told us of his sister passing away from TB. Aw, that's so sad. Very sad story.
I'll tell you a funny story from that. I'll continue on that Yuma story, but there was a woman in a white dress that on the top floor of the bank building, aka county offices, people would come out of their office and turn into the hallway, and she'd be standing there, and then she would just go out the end of the hall. She'd turn, look at them, and then turn and walk out the window at the end of the hallway, which of course there was nothing out there. It was the side of the building. But when they were actually refinishing the building, they had stacks of drywall out in the back, and then they had like a chain link fence with barbed wire around it that was right, in the back alley, and the right behind it there was a bar, and it was like a biker bar, and there was the owner of it who I had met. He's big burly guy, and he was closing up late one night and walks out of his bar, and he looks up, and there's a woman in a white dress sitting on top of the part of the drywall sheets that are stacked up out there. And he turned, looked at her, smiled, waved. She waved back at him. And then he turned to lock the door, and he turned back around, and she was gone.
Interesting.
And I always thought, I always loved that. But, when you've had ghosts smile back at you, I've had that happen a couple times myself, but it was, it always makes me think, how is this, how does this happen? Why, like you were talking about quantum, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
I got Carrie saying my kids were very intuitive and told me when I was learning to remove soul fractal residual energy, they could see I was able to do this and coming to me to be crossed over. And that's why the doorbell rang. Ooh,
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm not really sure what she means by fractal energy. Anyone know about that?
I believe that souls can have, if a person has intense, like, traumatic events in their lifetime, the feeling of your soul being fractal, meaning left in different places, or memories or time, and so I get that a lot. Also, I design headstones for a living, so most of my clients are dead, and so and that does happen, that where that causes a lot of confusion amongst the dead, because even for the living, when we experience traumatic events, a lot of times our brains, like, we don't even remember that in our lifetime. A lot of people shut down and don't remember that part of their life. Well, it's the same with I've experienced anyways with spirits, because especially if they died in a really traumatic, like a car accident or something, they might not know that, and so, but they're constantly, that's a fractured part of themselves where they can't move on, so they continue trying to find what it is they're looking for in this world, or on, so they can move on. Maybe that's what she's referring to.
Interesting.
And that's what a lot of psychics and mediums and such help with, because there's so many that don't even realize they're not living, that show up to me just as a living person.
Oh, absolutely. I had one experience where the person did not believe that they were gone. And it was literally a battle. It was quite an experience. It actually took myself and a friend of mine in order to deal with him, but he was very much influencing his widow to the point where he was like almost caused her to crash her car, and in order to get him to move on was a challenge and a half. So yeah, agreed.
I got Carrie saying, yes, Trish explained it right. Traumatized soul parts lost in the land. Interesting. I guess, to me, listening to that, and I do wonder sometimes, because I hear people talk about soul and spirit and mind, consciousness, and all of these things I believe in all of these things, but they're all kind of like conceptual. ideas, like people will think that their mind is in their brain, and not really. And your consciousness also is in your brain, and maybe your spirit and your soul are in your heart, but not really. These are very conceptual terms. So, that I think it might be easier to say an energetic fracture, where you've left a fingerprint or an imprint here, there, a piece of yourself here. And we don't know the rules of the spirit world, because I wouldn't really think that cemeteries would be haunted. Who would want to be there? They would want to go back someplace where they could go back, but you could be showing up here and there and all over the place. You could be showing up as much as Al Capone. Everybody sees Al Capone. Al Capone's everywhere. Everywhere's haunted because Al Capone was here before.
I think cemeteries are haunted because of the living, because the living are the ones that bring that energy to the cemetery. The living's the one. People go to cemeteries and feel guilt or shame or intense emotions of whoever they're visiting, for the most part. If you go to visit a loved one and you feel like you should have done more or said more, whatever, coulda, shoulda, woulda, all those things people bring to cemeteries. And so you're bringing that energy to the cemetery, which creates almost a poltergeist of hauntings, which is why in my opinion, is why cemeteries are haunted more by the living than the dead, because it's a place for essentially for the dead to rest. However, a lot of times we as the living don't even realize that we're what is causing those that have passed on to hold on a lot of times, or to not be able to move on, because it's our energy calling them back almost. So, and people don't realize that. And because I do work around cemeteries all the time, I've really become accustomed to seeing, when families come in and stuff, how much of their emotion is affecting the environment, either at the cemetery or even to the one who's passed on.
Yeah. So, it's not like what you're saying. It doesn't necessarily happen independently of the people and the emotional charge that they bring to. But I think you would always have a little tie to where your bones are.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Although it would be your least favorite place to hang out.
I think that's to the dead. I think that's their anchor point, but there's also different theories, especially in like Native American culture and stuff, where it or even Vikings, if you're cremated, for example, and say your ashes are scattered in the ocean or a river or something, or just in the land somewhere, in the wind. So that person wouldn't have an anchor necessarily as in one place, but their energy would be essentially in a lot of places,
including where they were when they died.
Right.
We have like 6 minutes left, so we'll see what Carl has to say and let everybody know what everybody's up to, and that'll be pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. I mean, I've been in some cemeteries that you can just feel, I don't want to say residual, but you can feel the sorrow there. Mm-hmm. And that is, I don't want to say like a negative vortex, but certainly impactful,
Mm-hmm.
Well, on top of that, with that type of vulnerable energy, with emotional people there, with sadness and hurt and shame and all this other stuff, that also attracts non-human spirits. That's the perfect place for non-human spirits to target, or to hang out, essentially, because people with lower vibrations are more susceptible to becoming possessed and things like that. So that's why I tell it, like, especially for like ghost hunters and stuff, like if their vibration is low and they keep getting sick or they keep getting, you shouldn't go to places like that.
Yeah.
Oh,
there was one place that I couldn't even walk down that alley, but it was at the back of where the Iroquois Theater was, and it burned on December 30th, 1903 in Chicago. And in that back alley, there were so many people that died trying to, take a gangplank catwalk out of that area and fell to their deaths or burned or, and I just want to say the feeling there was so deep. And I had talked to another investigator, and he had been by there, and he said, and I said, "Oh, I was walking past," and he goes, "You saw them, didn't you? Or you felt them?" And I said, "Yeah." I was like, they're, and that's,
and there's so many haunted theaters.
Oh,
that's
yeah.
something a little bit unexpected, because you expect, a Civil War battlefield, an old prison, an old tuberculosis hospital, mental hospital, sure, yes. But the theaters, so many haunted theaters, and I've been in them. I had a really weird experience in a haunted theater. I was sitting in the front and taking notes because I was at a conference, and it was dark, and I felt somebody pull my shirt like this behind me, and there was nobody sitting behind me. I turned around to look who did that, and there was nobody behind me for like 3 rows. But I could feel them grab the material on my shirt and pull to let me know that they were there. So that was a really cool story. That was in Decatur, Illinois, at the old Lincoln Theater.
Oh, okay.
If you ever been to that one.
With that, like, theaters are another place where that evokes a lot of emotion in people.
Oh yeah,
Not
that's
only
true.
that, a lot of times in theaters, especially old theater, they used to reenact traumatic, even
Sure.
like Shakespeare's not a happy
No.
show, like, play. That's not, so things like that. And when you replay it over and over and over, that's again creating that energy, re-emphasizing that event or what have you. So I don't think you would see it as much in the newer ones, but even so, even music like symphonies and things like that contain certain frequencies and evoke a lot of emotion. So
right.
But yeah, the Rainbow Room at the Hotel Baker in St. Charles, Illinois. Oh my gosh. Oof.
I have never been in there, but I'll have to keep that in mind. I want to thank both of you. I had a really good time. We had a good conversation that went all over the place, and let everybody know where you're going to be. And I also want to thank UPRN Talk Radio 107.7 FM in New Orleans, 105.3 in the Gulf Coast, Joe Montaldo, Michelle DeRoche. And after our show, everybody stay tuned for Carrie Lynn Shellhorn and Spirit Switchboard. So where can they find you? Mostly Facebook, or if someone wanted to get a hold of you, also you could send a message to me and I would make sure it gets to them.
That'll work. I know the end of July I'm going to be helping out on the BFRO expedition in Arizona here. So if you have any interest in looking for Bigfoot, I encourage you to go out and sign up for that. But Trish, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh no, I was gonna say I have a new project coming up, but as Annette said, I mean, people will be able to find me if they're drawn to me. They know where to look, but. But again, I'm like Annette. I don't want to. I've done this so many times, and if I try to put it out there, like, before I actually complete it, then and it's something that I am being guided to release, I can't do that anymore because everything in the world will try to stop me. So it'll be a surprise. That's all I can say. It's
It'll
coming
be a
out though.
surprise. And I'd like to have you back again, pretty soon. And I know Carl's going to be with us. I saw you on the schedule. And next week, I have Pat Fitzhugh coming. And he wrote a very interesting book about the Bell Witch house. And we're going to be talking about that next week. So that'll be a lot of fun. And I hope everybody will be back to join us. We love our chatters. We wish everybody a great evening and a great weekend. And thank you for joining us. You mean the world to us. Really, you're the reason why we do all of this. And again, thank you on behalf of Father Shawn. I did put the link in the chat room, and everybody remember him in your thoughts and prayers. And with that, I will sign off. Many thanks, and I will see both of you again soon, hopefully, and really appreciate it.
Thanks, Annette.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Take care. Bye-bye.